Hey guys, welcome to Cape and Cowl Cafe. I'm Nemo, and today we're going to yet again be talking about LEGO Batman: Legacy of the Dark Knight. Now, as hyped as we all are for this game, I still wanted to cover some of the concerns that the community has prior to its release. Now, if you guys enjoyed the video at any point today, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button, but let's hop right in. Alright, first up. Only concern is that the game claims to cover the Batman mythos but leaves out three of his most important companions, Jason, Tim, Damian, while having Talia as a playable character. You know, this is something that I actually wasn't concerned about before, but I think I am now, and that's because I'm certain that it's just going to be Dick Grayson in the game, and that includes the skins. I for sure thought that it was going to be that there was one playable Robin slot, and then the identity of that Robin would change throughout the game as you continue the story, and there would be different skins for each and every Robin. So there would be skins for Dick, Jason, Tim, Damian, all of them. But no, like besides the LEGO Batman 2008 skin, every single Robin costume in this game belongs to Dick Grayson. There are no Tim Drake suits, there's no Damian, there's no Jason, it's just Dick Grayson, and that's a little disappointing. Now, when it comes to adapting the entire Batman mythos in one game, I can definitely understand the desire to streamline the whole experience and only have one Robin, because Batman's, history with Robins is a little messy and confusing, and there's a lot of them. So like, I get it, but it's still a little disappointing, But honestly, knowing TT Games' history with DLC, we're probably going to get extra skin packs, so maybe there'll be one for each of the Robins so we can finally get some costumes for Tim and Damian. And really, like Talia al Ghul as one of the playable characters, it just seems kind of weird. Like I understand Jim Gordon, all the other characters make sense, but what we could have done to fix all of this is just add Red Hood as a playable character, because we know that the Robin character is going to transition into Nightwing, and then I just assumed that once Nightwing happens, then the Robin character will just change to a new identity, so either Jason, Tim, or Damian. So if you added Red Hood as one of those extra identities, then you could have just excluded Damian and then have Dick as Nightwing, Jason as Red Hood, and then at the end of the game, you would have Tim as Robin. That would make the most sense, but they're adding Talia. Now, I think that she's just going to be a playable character during the tutorial mission when you're training with the League of Shadows, and that just seems really weird to me, to have an entire playable character dedicated to one level. It doesn't make sense. Alright, next up. I'm worried that everyone else's suit roster isn't as fleshed out as Batman's. Now, we just talked about this with Robin, because we only see costumes that belong to Dick Grayson in this game so far. But, I mean, it's Batman. What did you expect? Okay, Batman has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comic book costumes that he's had throughout the years, as well as costumes from the movies and animated shows and video games. And at Nightwing, Robin, Catwoman, Batgirl, they just don't have as many. Like, sure, they have a lot, but it's not going to be the same amount as Batman. So this is something that I completely 100% expected, and I'm not really upset about. How many Nightwing costumes are there, and how many can you add to the game? And from what we've seen, they've added pretty much every Nightwing costume that I can think of, that I would want. So this just doesn't really seem like an issue to me. I'm not worried about this. I'm just hoping for Killer Moth as a boss fight. If the Arkham games can't deliver, maybe their successor can. Now, I love Killer Moth. He's one of my favorite Batman villains, and I hope that they have some kind of reference to him, or that he's just straight up in the game, because his boss fight in the original LEGO Batman game was so fun, and his level was one of the best levels in the game. It was just so fun. And Killer Moth is just so goofy and silly, and he's just such a fun, ridiculous Batman villain. And since this game is leaning into every side of Batman, including the silly, campy sides of him, I don't understand, why they wouldn't include him. He's just classic, They have to include Killer Moth. After seeing that Robin's parents don't die, I'm a little worried that they're going to shy away from the darker sides of Batman stories. I know it's a LEGO game, but I think older games still tackled darker stories like Lord of the Rings and kept the whole story in, while still appealing to younger players. I just want to see Bane beat the crap out of Batman and have plots like Jason's death, but I'm doubting it. Now, for those of you who don't know, and this might be a minor spoiler, but in the gameplay footage that was revealed to us last week, we saw how Dick Grayson's parents met their end. They didn't. They didn't die at all, okay? And it wasn't even Tony Zuko or Two-Face that cut the line that, made them fall into that hot dog cart. It was Dick Grayson. They were almost murdered by their own son. So instead of his parents dying and then he goes to live with Bruce, Dick Grayson's just fired. Like, he's fired from the circus, and his parents just, abandoned him. And then he goes to live with Batman. That is just, I get it. You want to keep it lighthearted, but that's a huge departure from the original story. Like, the whole time that Robin is hanging around with Batman, patrolling the streets of Gotham, his parents are still out there alive. They just don't care about him anymore. They just fired him. They fired him for being their son. That is just ridiculous. Like, I honestly thought that they were just going to have the Flying Graysons fall to their death and then just break into a bunch of Lego pieces. You know, that would be what would make the most sense. And if you look at games like Lego Lord of the Rings and Lego Star Wars, that kind of stuff happens all the time. So I just don't understand why they went this direction. Like, it's kind of funny, but I guess it doesn't really matter. This is a Lego game we're talking about. But in terms of the other darker stories, there is no way in hell that they are going to adapt Under the Red Hood in Lego form. That would just be ridiculous. Okay, no, that's not happening. All right, next, I'm worried that the 2004 suit and Batmobile won't be in it. Yeah, I don't think, those suits are coming. They're way too similar to the Brave and the Bold suit and the B-Task costume, and the only thing that would make that costume look different in the game would be the cowl mold, and I don't think that one piece really justifies a whole different alternate costume. Now, the Batmobile is something that they could have included, because that show has two, and they're both awesome, especially the second one. And the 2004 Batman show is like, I think it's my favorite Batman show, okay? It's definitely not as good as B-Task, but it is the one that I enjoy rewatching the most. And I'm a little disappointed that the suit isn't in the game, and there are definitely things that they could have done to make the costumes look different, like the cowl mold, the shorter ears, but also the 2004 suit has a long-ass cape, and that would have been really cool to see. But hey, there's DLC packs, we might get it in the future, and if the Lego Batman fan base is anything like the Insomniac Spider-Man fan base, we could always just send them death threats and bully them until we get the suit, right? Right? Yeah, you guys are a bunch of losers. I wish we could customize characters with existing pieces from different costumes, but it seems like we'll only get palette swaps, which are almost always uglier and less interesting. Yeah, I agree, and if even not a character customizer that lets you switch the pieces around from every character, at least give us a Batsuit customizer, because there are so many different Batsuits and so many different pieces, and it would just be fun, and I'm not a huge fan of the palette swap mechanic that they've gone with so far. It seems like you can't really choose the individual colors, so you can't choose a darker shade of gray and a lighter shade of blue or something. It just is one color. So the fun thing, though, about it is that a lot of these palette swaps have special effects that are added onto your skin. Like, there's a green one in the game that's called Filthy Rich, and it makes Batman green, but when you're gliding, it also makes money fly off of his cape. And I'm assuming the same thing will apply to the Batmobile palette swaps, because we know that those are going to be in the game. So, sure, some of these are fun, but I'm sure most people would have preferred a Batsuit customizer. I'm a bit worried that the game will make me want to change the looks of the characters and the villains as the game goes. I'm plenty fine doing that with Batman, but I'd like to pick and set one Joker, one Penguin, etc. Although I do hope that they still allow for you to change them should you want. Yeah, I mean, we've seen different looks for all of these villains in the game. Like, Joker has different looks that he goes through throughout the story, and I would like to be able to pick which one I want, I mean, and this especially applies to other characters like Bane, because I personally hate his design from The Dark Knight Rises, and I would love to be able to equip a Nightfall-inspired costume for him. That would just be awesome. Same thing goes with Mr. Freeze. I'm not a huge fan of his costume from Batman and Robin. Would love to have a B-Task-inspired look for him. Aside from performance issues, I'm hyped for the game. I'm hoping, though, that you can enter the Batcave via Wayne Manor and vice versa. I don't know if Wayne Manor is going to be explorable in the game. I think it's just going to be the grounds, and for that one mission in the beginning of the game where you're playing as young Bruce, I don't know, okay? Because there's no day and night cycle in this game. It's all taking place at night, so I don't think you're going to be able to go to Wayne Manor outside of the story. And I think that the Batcave is just going to be a fast travel location only, so you're not going to be able to drive from the Batcave to Gotham City. It's going to be a lot like Arkham Origins, where you have to fast travel each and every time. So it's a little disappointing, but, whatever. My concern is that the Switch 2 version still doesn't have a release date. I want to be able to play it on the go too. Yeah, I think you're going to have to wait a bit. Okay, what sucks about the Switch 2 is everyone demands that these high-end next-gen titles be playable on the Switch 2, and what that essentially means is that they just have to make the game worse and dumb it down so that the Switch 2 can run it, because the Switch 2, in my opinion, sucks and should not be sharing titles with these next-gen consoles, because it just dumbs down the whole development process. And it's not necessary, okay? So if it were up to me, the Switch 2 wouldn't even get this game, okay? I mean, with the performance issues that we're hearing about, and I'll get to that in a little bit, I don't think that the Switch 2 is going to have a port for this game anytime soon. All right, next up. Performance is going to be awful. Not even 60 FPS on decent settings with a high-end GPU. Now, this has been the big talking point prior to release, and it's that the PC requirements for this game are just ridiculous. Okay, I'm going to put them on the screen here, and if you look at this lowest setting here, What this means is that the game will barely be able to hit 15 FPS without the frame generation. And games that are good games and are optimized well are supposed to be optimized without this frame generation on, so that it can hit 30 and 60 FPS by themselves, and then the frame gen will be able to help you hit higher frames past that. So it's supposed to be some kind of a boost to kind of help you get even better performance, but the baseline should be the same without the frame gen, and it's not, and so that's why a lot of people are really worried about this. I don't know how this is going to affect console performance. I feel like console performance is usually always more stable, and we see way more shaky PC releases. Like, look at the console version of Arkham Knight versus the PC version on release. It was an absolute train wreck, but Arkham Knight on console has always run very consistently well. So I'm not as worried when it comes to the console versions of this game, but the PC version, it might be cooked, honestly. And all of this is without even talking about the original PC recommendations that they had before they updated it, okay? Because before, the minimum settings required you to have 32 gigs of RAM. That is ridiculous. Do you know how expensive it is to buy 32 gigs of RAM today? It's like $500, and it's all because of AI, okay? Now, before I got a PC, I thought PC was the way to go. You know, it all sounded so great, and I was seeing people play games with, you know, like 500 frames, and it was crazy. But the more that I use my PC, the more that I appreciate my PS5, okay? Consoles just work. You plug it in, you play the game, okay? And I understand that if you have the money to throw at a good PC, you can, you know, run games even better than console. But most people just don't have that money, okay? So my recommendation would be to buy this game on console at this point. We haven't seen the console performance, but I'm just going to assume that it's going to be more stable than PC, just because that's been the track record for console games in the past. Truthfully, I'm not a fan of the voice. It just sounds off to me. I would have preferred if they used Troy Baker, Bruce Greenwood, Roger Craig Smith, or Will Arnett. Now, Will Arnett would have been cool because he's already Lego Batman, but I understand if they couldn't get him, so I don't understand why they didn't get Troy Baker. Troy Baker has already played Lego Batman, as well as regular Batman and tons of other projects like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover movie and the Telltale games, the previous 2 Lego Batman games. I don't know why they couldn't have just continued using him, because he is way better than the guy that they got. Now, I'm not trying to hate on the voice actor. I think he's going to do a perfectly fine job, but it's just not the same, okay? His Batman voice sounds like he's trying a little too hard, if that makes sense. And if you have to try too hard to sound like Batman, you're not Batman. All right, next up. My concern is it will age like milk, the same as the Skywalker saga. It's just so boring to play, the tedium of collectibles, and the story is just filled with meaningless objectives, trailing missions, flying. It's so boring. Now, I feel the exact same way about the Skywalker saga, and I bought that game on release, and honestly, I couldn't finish it, okay? It was so boring. There were way too many collectibles that had no meaning, and there were too many characters that you couldn't even use in the customizer. But I feel like Lego Batman is going to be different because, first off, there's not 300 characters, there's 7. And these characters are way more in-depth, and they actually have skill trees, and they're going to be way more fun to play. But also, the open world and the collectibles are all geared towards upgrading your characters and upgrading your Batcave. So the collectibles actually serve a purpose, okay? You're going to be collecting new suits, new trophies to put in the Batcave, new Batmobiles, new abilities, new palette swaps for those skins. It's just going to be better, in my opinion. I cannot wait for this game. Alright guys, that's going to be it for today's video. If you guys enjoyed it all, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like and subscribe button, and drop in the comments down below what you are most excited for with Lego Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight. Let's talk about it. But yeah, until next time, I'll see you guys later.